Welcome to Season 5 of the SARE Ladies podcast. This is where Asian American Pacific Islander women carve out their own space in real estate and shake up the status quo. Join your hosts, Anita Wong and Ashley Cow, as they dive deep into bold strategies, personal growth, and everything it takes to own it. From building wealth to boosting confidence. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the SARE Ladies podcast, where we talk about real estate, representation, and rewriting the rules of wealth. I'm your host, Anita Wong, real estate investor, syndicator, and co-founder of Give Rise Capital.
And I'm Ashley Cow, commercial mortgage lender, investor, recovering tech employee, and your co-host.
So today we are going to take a walk off the beaten path and get into a subject that everyone seems to be obsessed about, traveling and credit card points hacking.
Yes, but with a real estate twist. So most of us as investors are flying out of state, whether we're looking for properties, managing your existing properties, and those hotels, flights, car rentals can really add up. So we are here to talk today about how to hack your points for the investor traveler.
And today we are having Katherine Fan, whom we met at the Las Vegas conference this last October. And not only is she diving into real estate as a real estate investor, but Katherine by day is a personal finance travel journalist who has published more than 2,000 articles for sites like Nerdwallet, The Points Guy, and Business Insider. Welcome, Katherine. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Lovely to see you again.
Yes. Oh my gosh. People are going to be so obsessed with this podcast because I feel like I'm always constantly talking to people about how to any of the credit card stuff. And so I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. We're actually going to start off with some rapid fire questions to get to know you a little bit.
Love it.
Are we ready? Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So number of countries you've traveled.
So I was confused by this. I checked yesterday just because I checked off the Dominican Republic, but I think it's 44. I thought it was like 37. So
Wow.
Somewhere there.
Most overrated country.
Ooh, I don't tend to say this one a whole lot. I would say anytime you end up only in touristy spots, that's kind of stressful for me.
Okay. Most underrated country.
Ooh, most underrated country. I'm very partial to Taiwan. I don't know that I think it's underrated, but I love it.
Okay. Favorite airport.
Ooh, I am not answering these well. Let's say San Diego. I like how convenient it is to the city. Super easy to get in and out of. It's always pretty. Great lounges for credit cards.
Okay. Airport that makes you groan when you land.
Oh, probably like Denver or Atlanta. More when I depart, but they're just so giant.
I would say LAX. That's my That's terrible.
That's true.
Yeah. Chase the sign-up bonus or stay loyal to one ecosystem.
Ooh, I am a little bit more of a stay loyal to one ecosystem, mostly because I think it's so much work to keep chasing sign-up bonuses when you're already chasing that in real estate. I got enough numbers to keep up with.
What is the most creative redemption you've pulled off?
It's probably not the absolute best I've ever done, but flying back to surprise my dad in Taiwan when his mom died was really exciting because this was like 10 years ago. I was brand new to cards, and it was one of my very first redemptions. So I just showed up outside his door in rural Taiwan, and he was flabbergasted.
I love that.
And how did you do it with the points?
Yeah, so I just booked kind of a generic United one-way through LAX to Taiwan. But it was over Thanksgiving, and that ticket would have been about $3,000 last minute, which I definitely didn't have when I was just a kiddo. And it was honestly a really straightforward redemption, but it was my very first one. And this was back before we had international service. So I had to ask him his Wi-Fi password, get it before I left the US, log into his Wi-Fi from home, and then call him from outside the door to get him to open the door. So it was very creative for 2014.
Nice.
2014.
That's awesome. Well, that actually brings me to my next question. Tell us a little bit about you and what first drew you into the world of travel hacking.
Yeah, I would say, like many of us, especially those of us who are immigrants or children of immigrants or, grew up in a country that has asked us where we're from before, the whole idea of where you're from is such a complex topic. And so I think for me, it was growing up and all of our family vacations were just flying back to Taiwan to see grandparents. That was the first time I realized, oh, my idea of travel is not quite the same as like many of my childhood friends. And I think it's something that a lot of us in SARE in general can relate to, which is that travel isn't necessarily just for work or play. Very often it's for connection. So I think for me, connection is the heart of everything that attracts me in travel in general. And I don't see any difference between that for when I'm traveling to go check out an investment opportunity or traveling because I want to see somewhere new or I'm going to go visit family.
I love that. That's I've never heard it said that way. So I love that, it's not just a task or a chore to get from point A to point B, but there's a meaning behind that. Um, so real estate investors, as you mentioned, often fly out for different things like property tours, site walks, conferences, but they don't often see these trips as opportunities for reward optimization. So, in your experience, how can an investor think like a travel hacker without turning it into like a second job?
Yeah, I think my answer to this one is kind of similar to just getting into real estate in general. Yes, your mindset's going to have to change quite a bit because you're thinking about numbers very differently. Like when you walk into a house, you're no longer like, oh, do I think it's cute or do I like how it's decorated? You're like, what is my return on investment? What is my percentages on everything? Will I come out ahead? And I think same goes for travel. You're going to have to change your idea of when you want to travel, where you want to travel to really maximize that. So, for instance, in my example about traveling over Thanksgiving, sometimes you have no choice but to travel at a certain time, whereas people who are traveling more for leisure have more flexibility. I love using points and miles for those kinds of situations because it's way more fun to pay 20,000 points out of pocket than $800 for a last minute flight. And also, another benefit for travel hacking in general is the protections you can get from said credit card. So we've all been there before. If you get delayed, canceled, stranded somewhere, especially when money is tight, you don't want to think about an extra $500 for that hotel and food and rental car extension. Many of the best travel credit cards come with really good insurance for exactly those types of situations. So that's one way I think investors can really come out ahead by utilizing the right travel credit cards. Separately, I often talk to business owners about this, and it's double or triple the benefits if you're also a real estate investor, which is the amount of credit you get by having business credit cards in particular, but even just for personal credit cards. They work really well to improve your credit score, assuming, of course, you pay them off every month, which if you're a real estate investor, you already know how to manage all of that cash flow. So I've personally noticed that my credit score is sky high after using my cards for real estate renovations and things like that, because I'm spending huge amounts of money I wouldn't otherwise for personal use. And I get rewarded in turn by getting higher credit limits, which also helps my score for future investment opportunities. Anytime my credit gets checked, people are very excited about it. So I feel like I'm triple dipping in all the benefits here.
Interesting. So, are you mostly leveraging your business cards to gain points and then using those points for personal travel? Is that usually how it's set up?
I think it kind of depends on every individual person. It's probably like with real estate investing again. It kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. Usually, the way I like to think about it actually is picking that ecosystem you're the most comfortable with and then using the different resources within that ecosystem. You can diversify, of course, but it doesn't benefit you a ton if you're earning a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. I typically like sticking with one. I would say Chase is the easiest. They're the most flexible and they have a lot of options. So I have a lot of my cards and my travel credit through Chase. And as a result of that relationship, they see all the different types of accounts I have with them. And they typically give me a lot of whatever I ask for, whether it's a credit limit increase or, a new card or something like that. So for me, yeah, I typically prefer just staying as focused as I can. That way it's also less benefits I have to track. I just know what this one does. I know what it works for and what's most flexible. Another way I like telling people to think about it is instead of just reading what Reddit or the internet tells you is best, think about where you live and where you travel to the most. So for instance, you both are West Coast based, but you travel to, say, the central part of the US and occasionally probably like the Northeast quite a bit. You would want to focus on credit cards and issuers that have the best benefits in those areas. So for instance, you have Centurion lounges and I do not in Austin, Texas. So while I do personally have a platinum card, it's much less useful to me than it would be to you, because every time you go to SFO or fly into JFK, you can use the Centurion Lounge. Whereas for me, I really have to think about whether or not that investment is worth the extra cash to me. Not that it is about the dollar amount specifically, but it is about utilization. So if I'm just not going to use my Amex points as often, or if I don't fly Delta as much as I fly United, for example, it doesn't make sense for me to go chase Amex points, even if they're shiny and, they sound prestigious.
Yeah, so I'm part of the Chase ecosystem. So I have the Chase Reserve, and then I also have the Chase Inc., the different business cards and stuff. And um, and then I've been thinking about, like, hey, should I get into another ecosystem? And one of the reasons why I'm thinking about that is because there's a lot of changes in kind of the credit card landscape, especially with Chase and the Chase Reserve card, and that fee being much higher. And so I'm curious, like, what should I be thinking about if I were to consider, or do you have like a framework that you can share? I think you kind of shared, like, destination wise, if there's a Centurion Lounge, then maybe I can consider American Express card. But is there like anything else that you can suggest?
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you said also about, fees going up. I think who you travel with matters quite a bit, because if you have a family, as you said to the card changes, so many of them now don't allow guests anymore, or you have to pay extra, or you're cut off. So if you're probably not going to pick your favorite child and take that child into the lounge with you. So I think a lot of the best ecosystems are actually some of these up and coming ones, because they're a lot more eager to bring in new customers and retain them well. Whereas, the Chase and the Amexes of the world, they're actually looking to streamline and focus on their best customers, which don't always necessarily overlap with what we personally want. We're all recovering tech people. So, like, the way you travel in tech can be really different from the way you would travel as a business owner. I actually would say for real estate specifically, my Chase Inc. business cards are way more useful to me than my luxury travel cards, because they are designed for business expenses, because they are very comfortable. If I charge 5 figures on a Tuesday with no prior notice, I don't think I've ever gotten declined for something like that. Whereas the fraud protections that are in place for fancy travel cards, they want to protect you because you're probably not dropping $28,000 overnight for something, especially if you're in Texas all of a sudden. Let's say you're at like the Home Depot in middle of nowhere, Texas. The Chase Sapphire Reserve might be like, whoa, did you mean to do this? Whereas your Chase Inc. is like, oh, that makes total sense. So I actually really like a lot of the business cards that are available right now. I would say if I really had to draw a firm line, I would keep my fancy benefits on personal cards like the Amex Platinum, the Sapphire Reserve, the Capital One Venture X is a good example of a newer ecosystem that's up and coming. Capital One has really invested a lot of effort in the last decade to pursue a lot of consumers who previously just thought, it's Capital One. What's in your wallet? You think about Samuel L. Jackson and Jennifer Garner, but they have built out such a massive number of travel transfer partners. They have very flexible redemptions. And something they've done really well is, instead of making you figure out how to use their travel portal, it's basically like cash. If you book a rental car through there, they just give you a flat rate. And that is the same across almost all of their cards. So whether you're using the $395 annual fee card or you're using a free card, anytime you redeem travel with points through Capital One, you're typically earning, 10x on hotels or rental cars or something like that, 5x on flights. So I appreciate the way they've simplified that and made it easier for everyday people to, focus on the thing you're really, really good at, which is real estate investing and everything else you love, instead of getting over there and geeking out on, oh my gosh, you could get this redemption right now. So I think for business owners, flexibility and ease of use is really underrated.
Yeah. And the Venture X, that's a personal card too, but there's also a business card
Yeah.
for that too. Okay.
So One reason I'm really gung-ho on Capital One Venture X right now is because their annual fee is literally half that of now the Amex Platinum and the Chase Sapphire Reserve. And even for the fancy airline cards like the Delta Reserve or United Club cards, those are also several $100s a year. So Venture X has one of the biggest sign-up bonuses you can get right now, but it also has a really massive spending requirement. So pretty much, unless you have a specific type of business, I think real estate investors actually are some of the only individuals I can think of who can easily hit $30K spend to get that to, I don't remember how much it is.
It's like 100 or 200 or something.
It's like
Yeah.
200,000 points,
Yeah.
right? So it's like a couple $1,000s worth for a sign-up bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I've never really thought about like the business model behind the credit cards to help motivate. I was like, oh yeah, duh. Like that's so obvious. Because they're newer, they want to keep up with the Chase and things like that. And I'm also on the Chase ecosystem, but I think I like it too because they provide additional services for higher, for premium clients, right? They know we have a lot of money in their accounts. And it's much easier to be like, all right, this is not a charge that I approved. Can you just take care of it, please? Or, a bit more of a concierge service in that manner. But I also feel like kind of being like, lost because it's like there's so many people in Chase. I actually hate I have priority pass and I hate the priority lounges. Like they're just so packed full of people. I'm just like, I'm ready to get out of this too. Yeah. So, okay. So for people balancing careers, family, and investing, travel hacking seems to be, a hobby that it can easily become a hobby that burns time instead of saving money. So how do you keep the system simple and sustainable? And what do you tell readers who are just tempted by every new shiny sign-up bonus?
I think this is such a wise question because I think stereotypically, right, I would say a sizable percentage of the people in the points of mild hacking space are just people who like getting a really good deal. And
Asians.
yeah.
I mean, in general, real estate people.
It's great. And then everyone else, like I find people who are raised by immigrants in particular, we're always trying to figure out how to hack the system, how to get a better deal. Again, because we have such higher travel expenses than other people who don't have to go internationally to see grandma, grandpa. So I do think it can be a hobby that burns time instead of saving money. And same goes for real estate. I think number one is figure out whether or not you really enjoy it. Because if it is something that feels a little bit like a chore, we have so many options now that make it really simple. So again, like I said, Capital One is trying to do exactly that. And usually when I'm trying to differentiate these cards, I tell people, if you really don't want to think about it, you don't care about the logic, and you don't want to nerd out about it, go for something that's easy and will give you simple redemptions. Because then you're not looking for the very best redemption. You're just working for the one that works best for you. And I think the same goes for real estate investing, right? Like, don't go chase down an investment that requires you to be in spreadsheets all the time. If you just want to be a passive investor, find people you trust and then hands off. So same sort of approach there. Figure out what works best for you. Because just because someone you respect and admire is doing this other thing doesn't mean it's going to suit you. And same, if you are tempted by every shiny new sign-up bonus, that's okay too. If you enjoy the pursuit, which is half the fun sometimes, just track it the same way you would like anything else. I've got spreadsheets. There are tools out there also like apps and login, sign up, subscriptions you can get to help you manage all of that. What I will say is from personal experience on the real estate side, it is so much extra work from the accounting perspective to juggle through your various different credit cards. I'm working through a backlog of that as we speak. So make your life easier and don't do that in conjunction with your real estate side unless you have a specific goal in mind, you know how you want to leverage all that. I would recommend keeping your business cards separate. Work with an ecosystem where you can combine your points. Maybe get a business credit card for all your real estate expenses. But for the travel benefits, keep that on your personal credit side. So again, like your Sapphire Reserve. Just because it's easier to maintain your personal account rather than juggling whatever latest LLC or entity or pass through you've set up for real estate. And as far as keeping it simple and sustainable, it's okay to diversify, but again, remember why you're doing it. So for instance, if you're branching out to a new region of the US that you want to invest in and they don't really have lounges or whatever, you could, even move over to maybe like a cash travel credit card or something like that. But if you are sticking with the places you already know well and travel to, I wouldn't change up my credit card strategy too much specifically for that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I honestly think I'm not out of the Chase ecosystem for my marriage because we argue about credit cards all the days long. Because I think, well, I mean, at least for me, we have we have certain rules around the LLC structure, right? So for me, it's like we form a new LLC once we gather about $5 million in each LLC, right? And each LLC gets its own credit cards, and now I'm just like, just like there's just so many credit cards, and then you have to chase the minimums, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so much more complicated because it kind of gets into it gets into like a lot of the nitty gritties of of actually like just the colluding of the finances, right? So that's why people need spreadsheets.
That's why we need spreadsheets and agreements on boundaries. Two random tidbits that people may not know about, may already, but took me a long time to learn. You can downgrade credit cards. If you signed up for one that was fancy and had a nice sign-up bonus starting out, typically the higher the sign-up bonus, the higher the annual fee. But you can usually downgrade credit cards instead of canceling them. There are pros and cons to this. The pro is, you keep your credit line intact, blah, blah, blah. You can also lock the cards, just like within Chase, log in, click, there's a button right in the card profile to allow you to lock it. So for instance, if you've hit that limit within the LLC and it's kind of just maintenance at this point, you can lock it so that you only go in and make purchases when you know about it. For instance, let's say you're updating your insurance and you know that transaction's happening the next few days. Unlock it and then lock it again so you don't forget about it and mess up on it. The cons of not closing a credit card and downgrading it instead is obviously, it could get stolen. You might be more tempted to use it. But I think people in the real estate space are much less prone to the frivolous spending that you might otherwise, because you already know it doesn't benefit you at all in your long-term goals. So one thing I like doing is just keeping most of my cards open, locked, but it keeps my credit utilization low because I keep that credit limit that's attached to that card. That way, excuse me, that way I'm not losing like $5K, $50K of credit just because I didn't want to deal with it anymore.
I have heard that for certain credit cards that if you've kind of been in it for a long time, you can just downgrade it and then do another sign up with the sign up bonus for so it's just like you downgrade your old Sapphire Reserve and then you can jump onto the new one. Is that true?
Yeah, so Chase is kind of cutting down on that as of just the last month or two. So the answer is yes, but less and less moving forward because enough people have figured that out. But that's typically for people who are churning it. So churning specifically is where you sign up, get the sign up bonus, then you dump it immediately and you try to do that again. Typically, I would say real estate investors are doing less of that. Like, yes, we might be flipping properties, but it's legitimate spend. I'm not going to Office Depot and buying $20,000 worth of gift cards and then getting rid of the card right after. So I would say, typically speaking, if getting another sign-up bonus is your goal and you have a legitimate business for it, it's really easy to just go into Chase and talk to them and say, this is what I'm doing. Show me your paperwork, especially as an investor. Very easy for you to do. Another trick I really like is I like just going into a Chase branch. I hate being on the phone and I like having them do all the work for me. So if I apply, I'm typically applying for the best sign-up bonus I can get. But if I get a reconsideration message, which is like, oh, we're reviewing your profile and we'll get back to you in 5 to 7 business days, I'll typically go in about 2 to 3 days after that. Any Chase branch, ask to speak with a banker, and then they will make that call for you. They're usually really friendly, and they can kind of explain a little bit better to the person on the reconsideration line what you're trying to do. So they'll say like, Anita is a business owner. It might look like she hasn't used these other cards in a while, but she's starting this new LLC. So they'll explain it based on all the paperwork you have. That's one of my favorite things. Just having them do the work for me is great.
And then does it prevent like fraudulent charges in the future, or like that it helps buffer that, or just with the reconciliation period?
No, so it literally is just basically your file is sitting in front of them and they're trying to decide whether to reject it or keep it, right? I can do that call myself, no problem. But I kind of like just getting out of the house and having them do it for me because I feel like it personally lends a little bit more credence to what I'm doing as well because they're looking at the papers. I can fax all of them over or email them over or whatever, but it's annoying to have to do that. It feels very dated to scan and it's not worth my effort. So I personally just like going to the branch, taking my sheaf of paperwork and handing it all to them to handle for me.
That literally just happened to me because I was trying to apply for another Chase Business Inc. card. And then they said that my credit amount was beyond their threshold or something like that. And so they needed to do another review. And so I wonder if going into the bank just increases my chances, or do you have a higher success rate if you go in person rather than talking to somebody on the phone?
I am not enough of a data person to tell you that for sure, and they probably wouldn't let me confirm it if it were. But I personally have found it easier to just do that because they can kind of see that I don't look like a scammer. I'm not here to like score free points or whatever. But especially for stuff that's a little weird, like here's my latest investment or here's why I'm spending $50,000, which sounds shady unless you can explain it. I feel like some of what I do in real estate is a little easier to explain in person. And then also as far as like the Chase business cards go, I've found them to be really beneficial for specifically for some categories like construction materials. I know a lot of times when we're looking at renovations and stuff like that, we're told cash only a lot of the time, but I've almost all of my vendors have been flexible with letting me buy stuff using my card. I also say it's easier for expense tracking, which it is. But sometimes I will either once or twice for people I really trust, I've given them an authorized user card and then they just use that to swipe at Home Depot or wherever else they're buying their material. And then maybe I pay them by check or something like that. But I have been able to earn points on some stuff that they told me was pure cash only before.
So if you are advising an investor planning their next year's travel, conferences, investor trips, site visits, what big trends or card changes would you tell them to prepare for in 2026?
Yeah, I would say for pretty much anyone who's trying to attend conferences in general, the same thing I do with credit cards, I like doing with hotels and flights as well. I like picking a few brands that service a lot of the places I tend to go to and are readily available. So for example, I really like Hyatt properties, but they don't have that big of a global presence. So I'm kind of all in on Marriott almost entirely for convenience because I've personally found hotel status to be extremely useful, especially for erratic travel. So let's say you have a site tour and you were supposed to go at 11, but you now can't go till 3. If you have status, you can push your flight back. It doesn't cost you anything extra. If you want to stay in your room until 3 o'clock, that late checkout, you don't have to pay an extra $50 for it because it just comes as one of your benefits. So this isn't specific to just conference travel, but I typically will try to chase my status throughout the year. And many hotel chains, if you spend a certain amount on their credit cards, they'll give you extra incentives. So for instance, for the Hilton cards, the mid-tier card is called the Surpass. And if you spend $15,000 on that per year, they'll give you a bonus free night award, which you can use literally anywhere. So the Waldorf Astoria, Los Cabos, Pedregal. I've been there one time and it was like, it's one of those dreamy aspirational vacation honeymoon resorts that typically costs minimum of $1,100 a night, but that's completely free. So again, if you were going to spend $15K a year anyway, some people have multiples of these cards that have the extra spending bonus. So again, then we're getting back into the area where, it's a little iffy and you have all this accounting to do. But if you really wanted the getaway, there are many ways to earn extra rewards just off of spend you were going to put on a credit card anyway. So I typically like doing that. I would say as soon as I know that I'm going to a conference, I look up the address and I try to book a points hotel right next to it, just as a placeholder. Because, sometimes the popular ones, they sell out right away. The conference block is sold out, the rates are high, whatever it is, you can always cancel. Book the ones that you can cancel, but you can always cancel it if you decide not to go later on. But I like doing a little pre-planning. So I try to get the best rate I can right when I hear about it. And knowing me, I'm going to forget about what I'm doing until like 6 weeks before I go. So then I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I already pre-planned this and it's already there in place for me. Also, same goes for site visits. Look for the closest chain hotel in your brand of choice that's closest to your site visit. Don't forget about benefits like a lot of times when you have airline or hotel status or credit card status, you have elite status with a rental car company as well. So that also frees you up because instead of paying extra to get a larger vehicle or maybe an SUV or truck or whatever you want, just go use your elite benefits and go pick your own car off of the lot. So lots of little ways that, none of these things are going to make or break your real estate investment journey, but they can really sweeten it, especially if you like getting a good deal.
Are you using most of your points on it sounds like you have a whole bunch of, but you're mostly in the Chase ecosystem. So are your points mostly allocated towards flights or towards hotels? Like for me, I usually try to get like the deals off of flights and get business class or whatever it is. So do you have a recommendation on where points are most leveraged?
Yeah, let me throw out a really quick tip first on business versus personal travel before I get into all that. But remember, all of your expenses for your business, you can write those off. So I typically like putting business expenses on my cards as cash and, just write it off because the points you earn from that, you can save for personal family travel. You typically will get the best value, out of your points booking for flights and especially booking for business or first class. Because again, it's just exponentially more valuable when you're looking at 10 to 20 cents per value on your points versus, you can get a pretty nice hotel deal. But especially if you travel a lot for business anyway, you might care a little bit less about where you stay or how you stay. And I typically will not book my flights directly through Chase. I typically will transfer those points to a specific airline for a specific redemption I want. But caveat there, that's pretty nerdy. That's where you get into the 3 a.m. deep dives on Reddit and reading blogs and stuff like that. So if you want simplicity, again, booking through your portal is not that bad. A lot of people in the points of mile space will tell you not to do it, but that's mostly because you have a little bit less flexibility. I think they work fine both ways. Whichever way you're more likely to use your rewards and use them effectively for you, it'll be fine.
Do you so I use sites like pointsia.com or something like that to kind of look for travel flights or for award travel. Do you have recommendations on sites?
So Rome, ROAME travel is also owned by an Asian founder. So I like that. I think that one is one of the most, it's very user friendly. One of the most technical ones I like is seats.aero. So that's seats.aero. That one kind of reminds me a little bit of old school ITA matrix, booking like a flight attendant. It's much more technical, but it's very detailed. So I like using it whenever, say, I'm planning a trip back to see family in Taiwan. I'll use that to see all of the available options out of all of the major US airports to all of the major Asia airports, because I'm much more willing to chase a nice seat and then figure out a way to get from point A to point B within that. Whereas Rome packages it very prettily for me up front. I think Points does the same, and then Points Me also. All of these are very similar sites that have come up in the last 3 to 5 years, which has been great because, all of us were doing this from scratch before, and that's where you really get into the deep dives for that sort of thing. You can also set up alerts from, say, Going, which used to be Scott's Cheap Flights. They typically offer cash deals, but they also have started posting a lot of deals for really good points redemptions as well. So there are a lot of good tools. Other people are working on the same stuff out there. It makes your life easier.
Awesome. I'm actually going to ask the last question, so we're kind of run out of time. But the Bilt credit card has been something that's been in talks in the real estate circle for a bit of time. And for those that you don't know, Bilt is a credit card that's getting famous for you can pay rent with it and get points from it. I think can you talk about other credit cards like that are tackling the mortgage and rent space? Because I feel like that's extremely valuable for real estate investors.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Built has been very popular. I use it even though I don't pay rent. I like it because it is one of those like simple starter cards that everyone can use. I can tell a college kid to get on it and they can grow with them. So I really like that flexibility. There's also no annual fee on it, which, is particularly useful when you're just getting started. But also if you're a business owner, the less expense you have to track, the better. Built is still, they're pretty close, but they're still working on building out their mortgage payment integration. There's a card called Mesa, which is smaller. It's backed by a smaller bank right now, so I personally haven't gotten into it just yet. But they, I believe, already have integration for paying mortgages. Typically, the way I'm seeing this work is these credit card companies negotiate deals typically with mortgage lenders, especially the bigger ecosystems. So the way Built has done it, for instance, they are able to offer rent payments. Their biggest route for paying rent comes from their partnerships with major apartment complexes. So if they're integrated with them at the top level, then the payment systems are already set up. Every time you get another property within those complexes, you're just adding all of those tenants as potential payers into the system. So I'm assuming that's how mortgage payment credit cards are going to work similarly. I think all of these businesses are in a rush to negotiate with the major mortgage brokers so that they can get that big integration and those partnerships in place. I think it took Built a while to build out their ability to pay rent for smaller landlords. Like if you and I pay you, Ash, every month, but I typically write you a check or I send you a Venmo. It took them a lot longer to figure out a system for how that would work. But what Built essentially did was they gave you a virtual bank account and they cut a check to Ash from me through my card. So you typically have to do a little planning ahead right now. So I'd have to pay rent probably on the 15th or the 18th of the month so that it will get to Ash by the 1st of the month and I'm not marked late. But it's just a little adjustment there. I'm assuming that mortgage payments will go very similarly, but I do know that those agreements work very differently. I think I asked them one time for some of the nitty gritty, and they were saying it's because you can't pay mortgage or a loan back essentially on credit quite the same way. So they have to figure out a whole new way to have these conversations.
Yeah, I love that. I was like, oh my God. I mean, we're multifamily. Do I have a mortgage payment for you? I was like,
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw out my caveat is I think they're probably gonna cap how much you can put on it per month. For instance, Built will not allow you to pay multiple rents on that card. You're limited to one rental payment per month. But you can pay the biggest the biggest rent payment on that one. And then just the rest you'd be taking out of your bank account like you do already. I'm going to assume mortgage investors would be similar. Maybe down the road, you could have one per LLC. They'll probably shut down some of that, I think, if people hack it too much. But that's how I would assume it would work.
Mm-hmm. I learned, because I have the Built credit card for rent, and then I learned that there's too many people just spending it on rent, and there's like basically a fine print that says like you have to actually spend it on 5 additional things, and I lost my points for like months. I was like, oh. Yeah, I mean, they had to like send out an email, and I think that there was some news about them losing their partnership with Wells Fargo over it and things like that. So I actually don't know which big bank that they're with now, but
They're
as
still
of
with Wells
that,
Fargo until February, I believe. But yes,
yeah.
they had like a 3-year agreement there. Yeah, no, I think that's one of the things that's kind of tricky about a lot of these cards. Sometimes they have fine print like that. You have to do that. You can only do one rent payment a month. They'll typically tell you. But also another thing I like about Built in general is it's a really nice dining card. So again, I currently don't pay rent, but I use it for most of my dining because their points allow me to transfer to Alaska Airlines, which is a very exclusive airline loyalty program that doesn't have a lot of earning opportunities. So I'm not going to put most of my spend on my Alaska card because I don't think it's as beneficial for me. But, all my dining points I can transfer to Alaska that way. And that's very useful to me.
I think I heard the built, if you like the first day of the month is like when there's more promotions or something like that. So you gotta hire.
Everything besides rent.
Okay.
But yeah. So
Yeah, you
I used
can
to have
also
built rent
get
day
bonus
parties with my
points.
friends.
What was that?
Oh, I said I used to have built rent day parties with my friends. Like we'd all just go out to eat on the first of the month and use our built cards. So that was very smart of them, right? They're incentivizing us to behave in a way that they want. And it's very useful that way.
Interesting.
So I would say on the back end, just remember we're all trying to hack things, and the credit card issuers are also trying to figure out how to. Um, they're garnering a lot of data from how we use our cards as well. But that means we do have some say in it as well. So if we consistently ask, for instance, can I have 3 rents or 3 mortgages paid on this card? You know, if enough people ask for it, they might figure out something. Built is also evolving. I believe they're coming out with different versions of the card next year. We don't know any specifics yet, but they sent out a survey a few months ago asking, would you pay more for a premium card? Most people are probably going to say no and stick with the $0 card, and they're going to be the ones who are paying rent. But if they say, okay, for $500 a year, I'll let you pay up to $50,000 mortgage per month, you're like, no brainer, I'm going to do that. So that's exactly where consumers have a lot of say in helping shape how these financial products evolve.
So write into your credit card companies and ask for ask for everything under the sun. Especially when you're just starting. I guess that's
Yes, absolutely.
That makes sense. Okay. I think we're about time, Ash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can go. I have tons of questions, but I
I
won't ask anymore. But I appreciate the time today, Catherine. I think this was so, it was fun. And I think what you said in the beginning about how travel is all about connection really resonated with me. And I love that. And I just love how you broke down, there's a points system or there's points hacking for any level and any type of person. So there might be the active person who wants to stay up till 3 a.m. and look for deals. And that is definitely me. And then there's the people who are like, I just want something simple and get like rewards for what I do. And so I love that you just kind of talk through the different ways that you can get into the space. And really appreciate the time today.
Yeah. I want to throw one final thing out there. I remember hearing at the anti-conference that a lot of people are getting their kids involved as well. And there's kind of that little loophole where you can employ your own children. One of the best ways to set your kids up for really strong credit as well is you can add them as authorized users to your credit card. So as long as you keep your credit score high, their initial credit score mirrors yours. So completely unintentionally, I'm sorry.
Is it an age requirement for that?
Some cards, yes. Other cards, no. Like I think for the Sapphire Reserve, you can put your kids on it at 13. I know some of them you can put your babies on them. Obviously, you probably won't be giving your kids the cards, but just having them linked to your credit profile boosts theirs. I totally unintentionally did this with my siblings when they moved back to the US and I was in my 20s. I believe my whole family has a credit score that's anchored off of mine because I just put them on my credit cards at the time. So keep that in mind as you are having your children help you demo the next building or something like that. They deserve to be rewarded for their contributions. And one of the best ways we can pay it forward to our next generations also is to share, kind of the wealth and the tools we've learned along the way.
I love that. And I might also gonna immediately go look up like lounges that can take kids in for free. Like I'm not even sure if lounges can take kids in for free. Or what happens when you have multiple kids? You can't just leave one outside.
I mean, you can.
I suppose you can, but you want to.
I mean,
amongst the chaos of what are the days.
Quiet on the flight, like, hey, one of you is going to have to stay outside, so whichever one's quietest gets to go in the lobby. No, you can simply pay a fee and just bring in, an extra guest. You usually, if you get free guests, it's usually like a limit of 2 for Chase, Sapphire Reserve. Capital One is about to change theirs, but anyone can pay to get into Capital One lounges. They're actually my favorite lounges in the ecosystem right now.
They are too. I love those.
They're so nice.
Yes.
DCA has the best one. It's a Jose Andres landing. It's basically a restaurant in the Washington DCA airport. And it's so classy. It's so nice. I really like it. But any of those you can pay to bring in kids.
I'm just starting to learn to travel with kids really, and I feel like I've begun to like pick and choose like lounges based on like even if they have like a microwave, I'm just like premium done. Like, do you have a microwave? Like the randomest stuff. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I love
A
that.
lot of the bigger airports have kids' rooms too. It's super nice, especially because, you can have little ones, and it's so much additional stress when you're like, did they make a sound? So they're usually
Mhm.
pretty soundproof. They have carpet, they have a couple toys in there, but usually kids I see traveling, especially the ones who are used to going to lounges, are really well behaved because their parents have been teaching them since day one. Like, here's how we behave in public, here's how we behave on planes. So it's really nice, actually.
Yeah, I've always wondered about like how, like I just see all this content about like people bringing kids to first class. I'm like, dude, if I was in first class paying the seat, I like do not want like 6 kids and like like with their parents. And I was like, dude, this is like not what I signed up for. I did not sign up to be in daycare.
Personally, the worst people behaved on planes are almost always adults.
So it's not the kids, it's the adults.
And those are definitely the adults a lot of the time. My
I
personal
see.
theory is if you're the
Like,
kind of adult who complains about children as a blanket statement, you probably were a problem child when you were That's my take on it.
probably. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so for our listeners that don't know, you said that you are actually going to be building a new website and some content for investor travel. Is that true, Catherine?
I have been talking about this for a long time, but I need to just sit down and do it. But I have been working toward a newsletter this past summer. It's called Points for Therapy, because I'm big on mental health as well. And originally I was thinking about talking about how I use my credit cards to pay for my therapy bills. And at least I'm like, I'm getting some points for therapy.
Love that.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited for that one.
Yes, I know. I also am thinking about building out this little guide for just credit cards for real estate, good ones that I like using, no stress, minimum research, that sort of thing, that are pretty good for. Some of them offer bonus categories for business expenses, which includes construction materials sometimes. So, yeah, those are in the works. But best way to find me right now is probably Instagram, and it's just Katherine Fan Girling. Because my last name is Fan, and I like a bad pun.
I love it. Cool. Well, again, Catherine, thank you so much for your time today. If this episode resonated, share it with a friend and leave us a review so we can reach more people. We'll see you next time on the SARE Ladies Podcast.
Bye, friends. Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the SARE Ladies Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow, share, and leave us a review. It helps more women in real estate find this community. And don't forget to connect with us at sareladies.com for more resources, stories, and support on your investing journey. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep breaking barriers.